Joining me now is Alex Epstein, commentator and author of The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels and also Fossil Future. Alex, good evening. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, Neil.
Alex, what do you make, first of all, of the claim that we are in a climate crisis?
I think it ends up being the exact opposite. Because so the way I measure whether something is a crisis is what's the state of human life at a given time. And so for climate, we can look back 100 years ago, and climate was far more dangerous to human beings. So we can measure the rate of climate-related disaster deaths. So how many people are dying from storms and flood, extreme heat, et cetera. And that rate has gone down by 98% over the last 100 years. So we haven't taken a safe climate and made it dangerous. We've taken a dangerous climate and made it safe. And actually, one of the number one things that's made it safe is the supposed climate villain, fossil fuels. Fossil fuels power the heating and air conditioning systems. They allow us to build sturdy buildings. They power storm warning systems. They power irrigation systems to alleviate drought, and on and on. And so people have this totally backwards. And I think the key is people are looking at the Earth not from what I call a human flourishing perspective, not from a perspective of how good it is for human beings, but rather from an anti-human impact perspective, the belief that human impact is bad, and therefore if we've impacted the climate, that must be bad. I do agree we've impacted the climate, but our overall impact on the world, including climate, is incredibly positive.
Are you saying then that even if our ways of accessing the cheapest energy, even if oil and gas are causing changes, that it's still better to keep going and exploit the advantages those energy streams provide to tackle the predictable consequences?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think of it like a prescription drug. You want to carefully weigh the benefits and the side effects, including the negative side effects. And what you see, you were mentioning before the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I did my own analysis of that, and you can see, just read it in a common sense way. Ask, hey, if we're thinking about the side effects on climate, we need to look at them with precision and even-handedness. So we need to look at both negative and positive. We need to be precise. You can see all sorts of huge exaggerations, including some of the ones you mentioned. You can see a total ignoring of any positive side effects, including the benefits of warming in a world where far more people die from cold than from heat. Totally ignoring the benefits of greening. But the most important benefit they're ignoring is energy. Yet energy makes everything better. So I don't just say, hey, climate change isn't as bad as you think. I say fossil fuels have made everything better, including climate. If you look at it from a human perspective, if you believe human impact is evil, the best Earth is one without us, then you think of it as a climate crisis. Otherwise, it's actually a climate renaissance.
What is the prospect? What is the likely fate of the billions, let's say in the poorest parts of the African continent, for example, if we press ahead and take away hydrocarbons? What is the short to medium term prospect for those billions of the poorest?
Well, you can look at it from at least two perspectives. So one is just the current state is apocalyptic in my view. So people, like if you and I woke up one day and we lived in sub-Saharan Africa, less than $2 a day, which it is many parts of there, like we would consider that the apocalypse, right? We would think the world has ended. It'd be a hell of a lot worse than a bad storm coming through our neighborhood, or a heat wave that we don't like, or a winter storm that we don't like that somehow gets blamed on global warming. So I view poverty as apocalyptic. I view the world as unlivable by our standards for at least half the people. I mean, we have 6 billion people who use an amount of energy that you and I would consider totally unacceptable. And most people in our countries would consider totally unacceptable. So my view is the current state without using more energy is a tragedy. Now, what we have is, instead of people recognizing the current state and the need for far more energy, you have people whose overriding priority is get rid of fossil fuels in the next 27 years. And that provides 80% of the world's energy today, including virtually all the energy that has lifted people out of poverty, including China and India, right? Where you've lifted, in recent decades, Chinese life expectancy has gone up by 10 years, Indian by 16 years. And this is hugely due to industrialization powered by fossil fuels. So it is such a cruel anti-human movement to take an energy poor world and say, hey, how do we make it even more energy poor? And then pretend, oh yeah, solar panels and wind turbines are somehow going to do it for them, but it's never worked for anyone, but we're willing to use billions of people as our own little experiment.
Alex, bear with me while I invite my studio guest to join in. Ingrid, How do you react? That's an unfamiliar line of argument, isn't it? That Alex is promoting there, that we should see the world as a threatening place, and it's our obligation to our fellow humankind to exploit a resource like hydrocarbons to let those populations cope with an unfriendly world.
Yeah, you're talking about sort of all just staying with the fossil fuels, the dirty fuels, as people call it. Is that what you're meaning?
Yes.
That way. Yeah, it's. I just don't get it. It's not a dirty fuel. There's a lot of byproducts, but everything, even in making what is supposed to be clean energy, relies on oil and the fossil fuels in any case. So I don't get where they're really coming from, because you can't eradicate them. And it is interesting, isn't it, that sort of like Germany, that was like, you know, leading this whole net zero thing, or one of the main ones leading it. You know, they want to go back to mining coal. China's going back to mining coal. They're there. They're natural resources. So we've got to look at. Do you know, another thing? I just want to say this. When you think, how is this possible that it's going up, up, up? When a few years ago the cars were belching out sooty fuel. It was oil, it was petrol, all that sort of thing, combustible fuel. There was lead in it. All those things. So surely at that time it wouldn't be going up now. It'd be going down, if anything, because we've moved it.
Alex, while I still have you, what do you make of the way in which the greening that is a consequence of CO2 is disregarded? You know, it seems to me that a planet becoming greener and more fertile, whatever's causing it has to be at least considered as at least a partial good.
Yeah, I think this comes down to philosophy. So my background is first and foremost as a philosopher, and then later I became an energy expert because I saw the thinking in this field was really bad. I think the key thing is, what is the standard by which we're measuring how good the Earth is? Because your standard or your metric determines so much. And as I indicated, I think most people are measuring the Earth, at least most leaders are measuring the Earth by an anti-human impact standard. So their view is human impact is bad and anything we do is bad. And this is how they can not care about the fact that we're making the Earth greener by the byproduct of our fossil fuel emissions, or our fossil fuel use, because it's viewed as if humans do it, it's bad. And I had a long conversation with Jordan Peterson on his show about this. And one of the things I tried to stress is the green movement isn't about the planet being as green as possible. It's about the planet being as dehumanized as possible. And if people are interested in more in the philosophy, read Fossil Future, particularly chapter 3, where I talk about the anti-human philosophy behind so much of our thinking that many of us absorb unwittingly. I certainly did before I figured it all out.
Alex, that idea, that anti-human aspect to so much of this is what chimes most strongly with me. I believe this to be a planet for humans, not a planet that should be without humans. I've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll hope to pick up this conversation at another available opportunity. Thanks for now, Alex Epstein.